Theodore Miller is a typical nobody loser, as it's plenty. He is the protagonist of this story. As the story begins, we see our protagonist, we call him Theo from now on, standing in Vince's laboratory. It is here that Theo receives his scolding from Vince. Vince emphasizes that, upon reviewing Theo's written test results, there is nothing to be disappointed about. The 3 points that have been subtracted from his test aren't even considered a big deal, given how he is in a league of his own when it comes to written exams. However, this is the Magic Academy where magic reigns supreme. Even with Theo's outstanding knowledge, if he is unable to produce passable results during the practical test, he will have difficulty graduating. Vince asks Theo about his current circle. Circles are a leveling system for magicians, with first being the lowest and ninth being the highest. However, achieving the ninth circle is a tale from ancient times. Theo says that he is barely at a second circle. Vince is disappointed that, despite attending the academy for 5 years, Theo hasn't mastered the second circle. This comment implies that Theo may be inadequate as a magician. Theo is already used to such remarks. He already knows everyone around him is mocking him for his lack of aptitude for magic. It seems that our protagonist has to possess an incredible amount of willpower to persevere for so long despite all the pity and mockery. Vince gives Theo an envelope. He says he is sorry for having to put our protagonist through this every single year, but this will be the last time. Vince seems to care about Theo in his own way. However, Theo thinks that Vince was never on his side. After the bitter talk, Theo leaves the room. Outside the lab, we see him clinging to the envelope as other students laugh at him behind his back, seemingly knowing what the letter implies. They appear pleased with the fact that Theo is just a loser in their eyes, and they stand above him. As he passes them by, he can feel and hear all the pity, mockery, fake sympathy, ridicule, contempt, and insults. All of them are relieved that he may finally be gone for good. While walking forward, Theo thinks to himself that he has walked this path for so long that he can't stop now, realizing that the starting point is already so far. He decides to fight his destiny no matter what and create a future for himself despite all the odds being stacked against him. The scene shifts to the library, a place where hardly anybody visits. In the Magic Academy, everybody finds knowledge to be useless, and magic aptitude and power are the only things that matter to them. Here, we find our protagonist, who is a regular in this library. He picks up a few books he is already familiar with. He has read them 1,000 times already, making it almost pointless to read them again since he already memorized them. But reading them gives him a sense of ease and peace in those hard times. During his regular routine, something particular catches his attention. It's a book he has never seen before, and since he knows the library by heart, it is an irregular sight to him. He approaches the book that is sticking out from the shelf. Right after he lays his finger on the book, it transforms into an unknown creature. The creature proceeds to swallow Theo whole. All we hear is a burst of ominous laughter, and we see our protagonist on the floor, seemingly unaffected by what just transpired. Unexpectedly, Theo hears a voice calling him and asking if he hears him. Theo thinks that he is losing it. The voice points him to look at his left hand. He does as the voice says. By doing so, he reveals a mysterious entity that has attached itself to him. The creature laughs and says that it seems he will survive. Theo, after witnessing this bizarre occurrence, screams in shock and terror. The creature explains and points out to Theo that it's too early to be surprised. As Theo tries to grasp what has just happened, the creature suddenly extends its tongue towards the pile of books that Theo has been reading previously and begins to eat them. Theo, in a desperate attempt to stop the creature, screams at it to stop and tries to pull the creature away from the books. As he does so, he stumbles and hits his head. At that moment, he felt a sensation that he tried to feel so many times, but just now the voice told him to stretch his hand. Finally, the feeling he has been yearning for so long has been subdued. As he stretches his hand, a lightning bolt comes out. Theo is in disbelief at what has happened. A notification pops up stating that the second circle lightning bolt has been acquired. The grimoire has awakened from a long slumber. It's extremely hungry. To satisfy its hunger, you must feed it books just like you did now. You have 10 minutes to ingest 4 more books. Startled by the abrupt voice he heard, Theo inquires about the message notification and its significance. He goes on to affirm that this cannot be a mere dream, as the pain in his arm is too real. The lightning bolt spell he had just cast was beyond his capabilities, for he had never before possessed any proficiency in magic. Even if he managed to use the spell, should it be so powerful as to know of a bookshelf? Theo realizes that with his hand that eats books, he finally has a chance. He quickly regains his composure and thinks about what the voice said to him. Coming to the conclusion that if he eats more books he will acquire skills from them, Theo asks the creature on his left hand about its name. The creature retorts that it will disclose this information to Theo provided he supplies it with more books. Should Theo fail to comply, he will face the dire consequence of being devoured by the creature. Theo answers that he will feed it as many books as it wants. As he fed the creature more books, he began to obtain more information from the mysterious voice. We learn that the creature is an ancient grimoire from the past. So far from the past that it has been already forgotten. The creature eats books and grows in power. The powers of the eaten objects is transferred to the user. If the user fails to feed the grimoire, he will be eaten by it. Theo says that he hears the general outline of the books in his head, and after that, he can remember the whole content of that book. The process takes some time to digest the books. Also, if the book quality is bad or too difficult for Theo to understand, then he will only gain a small benefit, if any at all. The notification pops up and the voice says, "The energy of the 4 elements digested, 3 more books needed." This notification signifies the completion of the digestion process. Once Theo has digested the books, he will be able to utilize the acquired abilities. Theo started to devour the books until sundown, acquiring all the magic he wasn't able to before. He ingested the following: Basic Magic Circle Drawing, Applied Defense Magic, Basic Fire Bolt, Application and Comprehension of Elements, Advanced Lightning Bolt, Revelation. Consuming such a multitude of books in one go inflicts unimaginable pain, causing Theo to come close to losing consciousness. Grimoire's hunger has been satisfied and the magic contained within the books has been absorbed into the body. For 5 years, Theo was unable to sense the magic that now surges abundantly within his heart. The grimoire is a picky eater. The grimoire said that the books were terrible, but he is full now. Theo asks the creature again about his name. The grimoire tells Theo that it's the only thing he wants to know, telling him to not act like he has no greed. The grimoire says to call him Gluttony. Theo asks Gluttony if he can give him an answer. There were still questions on Theo's mind. All he knows till this point is that Gluttony is unstable, and in order to stabilize him he needs to be fed hundreds of books. It feels like Gluttony is a school assignment he needs to complete. When Gluttony is full, he falls asleep. Before it drifts into slumber with a yawn, the voice assures that Gluttony will respond to any question posed by the host, but only once. Given that Gluttony is an ancient grimoire, it likely has lived for a long time. It cannot be a falsehood that it will answer any of Theo's questions, albeit just once. "Why are you hesitating?" Gluttony questioned. "If you had a question, you should ask now, before I fell asleep," Gluttony urges, noticing the sweat on Theo's face. With not much time available to ask a question, Theo contemplated his options. After some thought, he decided to begin with the most crucial question. He asked Gluttony about his identity. Gluttony spoke, expressing willingness to share, but questioned whether the Theo's intelligence, which they deemed narrow and superficial, could truly comprehend their words. Theo looked angrily at Gluttony. Gluttony finds Theo's behavior quite foolish. "Well, in that case," Gluttony decided, "I'll show some consideration, taking into account your level of intelligence. I'll provide a visual." Suddenly the room's atmosphere changes. A crack appears, from which tentacles emerge and grabbing Theo. A creature appears, coming closer towards Theo's head, proceeding to attach itself to his forehead. Suddenly the vision disappears and Theo falls on the ground. Gluttony laughingly explains that this is his limit. Assuming this answered his question, Gluttony stated he would see him next time. He still had a mountain of questions he wanted to ask. But the voice provided him with a brief explanation of all the information. First, Gluttony's form remains incomplete, and the voice serves as a guide that coexists with Gluttony. Second, Gluttony awakens once a day to satiate its hunger. After feeding, it responds to one question. Third, Gluttony comprehends the power held by its food and can discern more accurately than any other form of magic. Lastly, Gluttony extracts the essence of what it consumes and then delivers the effects in proportion to the user's comprehension. After enduring years of mockery, Theo has at last been bestowed with the ability to transform his life. Navigating the challenges of being considered a subpar student with insufficient perceived talent for magic has been a struggle for Theo, but that chapter is now firmly in the past. At this moment he decides to eat all the books he can. The scene shifts to the bustling school corridors, where students dash about, their laughter filling the air. In a classroom there stands Professor Vince with another man. They both reminisce about the past and how nice it was to have been young and free from the aches and pains of old age. The professor asks Vince if he will be staying at school during the following school break. Vince answers that due to the investment in his work, he has no other option but to stay. The professors ask if it is due to that student. That question seems to upset Vince. Suddenly a man comes through the door, asking for Professor Vince. He has been looking for him for a long time. Vince is displeased to see the man. The chubby man asks Vince about Theodore Miller, and inquires further about why is he not on the dropout list for this year. Vince, upset about the question, thinks to himself, "That Theo is the son of a ruined aristocrat. He is always saying that he can't do magic and is just working on his theory. But what's the point of having all that theory in your head if you can't put it into practice? Every class he asks pointless questions, giving me a headache. If you're aware you don't have a natural talent, why put in all this effort?" He ought to recognize his limitations and concentrate on learning his role. After contemplating Theo's situation, he answers the man. He said that he made Theo stay back a grade because he wanted to study more, and as a teacher, it is his job to guide and teach his students. Doing anything less than that would be an embarrassment to any professor. The chubby professor, being displeased by the answers, backs off, saying that he only asks cause he is organizing a list of personnel. He hastily retreats from the conversation, saying that he is hurry and has to go back to his work. Vince thinks to himself that Chubby is also a professor, yet he doesn't care about Theo. But Vince still believes in Theo. In the library, Theo is gathering various books, ready to devour them all. Selecting a good book has become notably simpler since Gluttony leveled up. From the general overview to the worth and capabilities of the book, information just comes to Theo. Learning magic comes effortlessly without any issues. There's a notable contrast in the rating of each book and the abilities they possess. Moreover, Theo now even possesses the skills necessary to excel in black magic. Even high-level books have become easier to understand. Gluttony has woken up asking to be fed 3 books. His hunger is completely random. One time the voice says what Gluttony wants to eat, the other time Gluttony himself says what he wants. The main challenge lies in Gluttony's selective taste. He finds it hard to be content with any book. However, indulging him isn't entirely detrimental, as Theo does acquire valuable skills and knowledge from the experience. Theo has already tried to feed 5 books to Gluttony, but he rejects them all. Gluttony is very disappointed in the books and asks for more delicious ones. Gluttony gestures towards the red book on the table, expressing a desire to devour its contents. Said book has the Belantes family seal of publication. After appraisal, Theo concludes that the book is original. The book title is The Study of Ballistic Magic, written by Alfred Belantes. Alfred Belantes, before becoming a prince, he was renowned as the preeminent magician, earning him the title of the Master of Magical Combat. Even at the age of 80, he retained the ability to perform extraordinary feats of magic. His popularity stemmed from his unique approach to wielding magic. He used the spell, Magic Missile, as his primary form of magic. It's a first circle magic, but despite that fact, he still climbs up the ranks. Theo ponders why such a book is withering away in such a place. The value of this book is out of the question, but devouring such a book may result in being expelled. He needs to make a quick decision. He acts quickly, letting Gluttony devour the book. Gluttony, after eating the book, says that is worthy of synchro. Theo, still in confusion, gets suddenly transported into the book's story. Successfully synchronizing with the author's memories, Theo finds himself reliving a battle from 45 years ago. He wondered what exactly was happening. Was he involved in this scene? He found it impossible to move as he wanted, as if he were merely an observer. He speculated that this must be the synchros that was mentioned before. It seemed to be the ability to synchronize with someone's memories. If that were true, then he was viewing this from the perspective of Alfred Belmont. Vincent, the captain of the First Night Order, declared his intention to lead from the front. He pointed out that while the enemy had formidable troops, they all operated under a single leader's command. Vincent expressed a hope that Alfred would permit him to take the lead. Alfred considered this and then responded with assurance, stating that he would take charge instead. The fierce battle begins with each army marching forward. Amidst the chaos of war, valiant knights clash in a fierce battle, their armor stained with blood. Amidst the tension, Alfred, a fierce commander, stands tall, declaring the onset of war. He states, "I am the Prince of Belantes. I hold the position of commander in the Belantes army. Alfred Belantes stands before you. If you intend to take my head, step forth and announce your name." Alfred, surrounded by enemy knights, suddenly finds himself face to face with Count Jason's eldest son Richard. The enemy taunts Alfred, but before he can finish his sentence, Alfred swiftly fires a shot, creating a hole in the enemy's body. The rest of the knights charge at Alfred, but he swiftly takes them down with precise shots, leaving behind a battlefield stained with blood. Theo is shocked. The spell surpasses everything he has ever learned. It was evident that this spell had undergone countless variations from its basic form, resulting in a high-power output capable of penetrating through the enemy. It was the simplest yet most perfect lethal move. In Alfred's stronghold, a man is dragged before him. Man is screaming, shouting to let him go. Desperation compelled him to shout for release, to beg for his freedom. Alfred was displeased by the man's appearance. He blasts his head off. He directed the guards to feed the body to the dogs, for in his eyes, this man was undeserving of any final respect. And as for the one who is watching, Alfred looks at Theo. He isn't sure why Theo has come, but he decides to allow him to return. This wasn't the location where he could discover the answer he sought. It was something they needed to find on their own, within their own reality. The synchro has come to an end. As Theo returns, he collapses onto the ground, reflecting on the fact that he must seek the answers on his own. In this strange, uncomfortable situation, there's more than meets the eye. But one thing's for sure, Theo now understands exactly how Prince Alfred used the magic missile. Thanks to the synchronization of the memories, it feels like Theo can do it just like Alfred did. Now, all that knowledge is tucked away inside him, like a secret treasure waiting to be used. But one question remains: how did his output increase by so much? Theo, once considered a dunce at the academy, experiences a profound transformation. He attempts to replicate the magic of the war hero, Alfred Belantes, and despite the pain and physical strain, he succeeds in producing a flash of light. This magic missile, although weaker than Alfred's, is still 2 to 3 times more powerful than conventional ones. Theo's success fills him with an unprecedented sense of joy and accomplishment. He has mastered a spell that no one else has, proving to himself that he is capable of great things. This newfound confidence fuels his determination to change his future. He turns his attention to Gluttony, the grimoire that has been instrumental in his transformation. Today, it has consumed 2 books, one of which was Alfred-style magic missile, and its achievements have exceeded Theo's expectations. He calls out to Gluttony, ready to ask a question. Theo asks about a way to increase his magic power. He is taken aback when Gluttony reveals that there are over 100 ways to increase magic power, far more than the 3 methods commonly known. However, Gluttony can only share one method with Theo. To ensure the method is suitable and achievable for him, Theo asks Gluttony to provide the most efficient method that he can use at his current level. Gluttony acknowledges this request, ready to share its wisdom once more. A hidden feature of Gluttony was then unlocked. As a grimoire that feeds on magic, Gluttony could absorb not just the essence, but also a portion of an item's abilities. Consuming items with magic power would increase Theodore's own magic power. This could even be done with cursed artifacts, and during Gluttony's sleep state. Theodore was surprised by this revelation. He realized that questioning Gluttony wasn't just about gaining knowledge, but also about unlocking more of its potential. However, finding items with magic power to feed Gluttony might be more challenging than he initially thought. Theodore realized that he couldn't feed Gluttony with items from the academy due to the risk of getting caught. The librarians might not notice a few missing books, but the caretakers in the classrooms would definitely notice missing items. They could easily trace it back to him. So, he decided to look outside the academy for items to feed Gluttony. After much thought, he came up with a solution but needed help to implement it. He thought of Professor Vince, who was always supportive of his talent. He believed that the professor wouldn't easily turn down his request for help. Theodore sought out Professor Vince the next day, knowing that he needed to act quickly. Despite being known as the Academy's longtime underachiever, Theodore had a good relationship with Professor Vince, who didn't judge him based on his background or abilities. Upon reaching Professor Vince's lab, Theodore knocked and was invited in. He greeted the professor and sat down when invited to do so. When asked about the purpose of his visit, Theodore revealed that he was there to apply for a permit to go outside. This surprised Professor Vince, who hadn't expected such a request. Nonetheless, Theodore handed over the documents he had prepared the night before, hoping to avoid any unnecessary questions about his reasons for wanting to leave. Theodore's request to go outside was unusual, as he typically spent his time in the library. Despite his confusion, Professor Vince signed the papers. He did express concern about the validity period, noting that students were usually free to leave the school until 3 in the afternoon during winter vacation. However, Theodore insisted that this wasn't enough for him. His goal was to obtain magic items, which would require more time for travel. Despite his curiosity, Professor Vince completed the paperwork and granted Theodore permission to leave the academy until dinner time. Theodore thanked Professor Vince, who dismissed it as a minor matter. However, Vince had something else he wanted to discuss with Theodore. He pulled out an envelope from a drawer and placed it on his desk, waiting for Theodore's response before deciding whether to hand it over. Theodore remembered the conversation he had with Professor Vince about becoming a magic scholar. This was a path for those who studied magic theoretically rather than practically, and Theodore's high intelligence made him a good fit. However, despite Professor Vince's disappointment, Theodore declined the offer, expressing his desire to become a magician instead. Professor Vince respected Theodore's decision and told him that he could always change his mind. After their conversation, Theodore left the room, leaving behind a heavy silence. Professor Vince noticed the spark in Theodore's eyes and felt optimistic, despite his initial skepticism. He found this development intriguing. The next day, Theodore left the academy for the first time in years. The city of Bergen, with its magic-infused streets and facilities, was familiar yet different. Magic items and artifacts were more common here than in other cities, making it a bustling hub for trade. However, Theodore wasn't interested in the artifact stores in the city center. His budget was limited, so he headed to the outskirts to find a black market trader dealing in genuine, defective, and cursed artifacts. These items were useless to ordinary people but not to Theodore. He had Gluttony, a grimoire that could consume anything magical, making even cursed items valuable to him. In the outskirts of Bergen City, where the buildings shrink and the roads lose their shine, a sense of nostalgia washes over Theo. The unchanged scenery, with its worn-out signs and beggars in dark alleys, takes him back to his second-grade days. Back then, he was a promising magician, admired by noble children. One such acquaintance led him to a black market trader in this area. However, those so-called friends abandoned him when his shortcomings came to light. Their friendship was with the excellent magician, not with Theodore Miller. Despite their betrayal, Theo remembers the path to the black market. He finds himself standing before a shabby shack that barely announces its existence. Uncleaned windows and creaky stairs add to its decrepit charm. An open sign on the door is the only invitation inside. With a sigh, Theo turns the doorknob and steps into a world resembling a general store filled with unpriced items of unknown purpose. This is the black market, where prices are not fixed but negotiated. Black market traders, skilled in the art of persuasion, can easily lighten the pockets of the unsuspecting. Their knack for selling cheap items at inflated prices makes them a force to be reckoned with. As Theo steps into this world, he braces himself for the encounter. A cheerful voice greets him from the back of the store. The vendor invites Theo to browse, stating that she won't provide any explanations about the items. This is a common practice among black market traders to avoid losing sales due to defective or cursed goods. The cost of cleansing cursed goods often exceeds their selling price. Theo begins his exploration, starting with a dagger displayed in a corner. His first task is to determine whether or not his abilities will be compromised. Theo utters the word, appraisal, and Gluttony's tongue licks the various items, revealing its secrets. A criminal steel sword made up of criminals from a forgotten kingdom, drachma saber with thorns that stick out from the hilt to make it look more intimidating, Arachne's eyes with traces of magic power. Excited by this discovery, Theo dives into the sea of items in the black market shop. Regardless of their value, Theo picks out items that could increase his magic power when consumed by gluttony. This black market shop, filled with seemingly useless items, turns out to be a golden hunting ground for Theo. Theo, a seemingly ordinary customer, astounded a black market trader with his uncanny knowledge of the defective items in the store. The trader initially scoffed at Theo's refusal to pay 2 gold for the items, but his amusement turned into intrigue as Theo detailed the flaws in each item. The trader realized that Theo might be an appraiser, a rare and highly valued individual capable of discerning the true value of items. Theo, armed with the power of gluttony that allowed him to mimic an appraiser's abilities, played along. The trader, now seeing Theo in a new light, closed his shop to engage in a more serious negotiation. Theo, maintaining his guise as an appraiser, prepared to negotiate and execute his plan to enhance his magical power. As the shop's sign flipped to closed, a palpable tension filled the air. The once bustling marketplace faded into a distant hum as the trader and Theo began their dance of negotiation. The trader, initially dismissive of Theo, now regarded him with a newfound respect and curiosity. Theo, on the other hand, remained calm and composed. He knew he had the upper hand in this negotiation and was ready to exploit it. His plan was set into motion, and he was ready to use this opportunity to increase his magic power. A black market trader is presented with an unusual deal by Theo. Theo offers to appraise products and pay for them using low-grade artifacts. Although this seems suspicious, the trader realizes that she stands to gain an enormous profit even if some items are defective. She considers the proposal carefully before agreeing to it. The black market trader hesitates to accept Theo's proposal because she doesn't understand the potential benefits. She is wary of accepting a one-sided deal and wonders if there is something she's missing. Despite this, she knows that profit is important in the world of black market trading, and she doesn't want to miss an opportunity. Theo realizes that the trader is hesitant and comes up with an idea to instill trust in the black market trader. Theo proposes using a Gia scroll, a magical item that enforces contracts, to ensure trust between them. Canis, the black market trader, is initially surprised but agrees when she realizes the benefits of such an arrangement. Canis carefully drafts the contract on the Gia scroll, adding clauses to protect herself. Theo insists on a confidentiality clause, which Canis accepts. The deal is sealed with the magical scroll, preventing any information from leaking out. They finalize their deal with blood thumbprints on the Gia scroll, which then activates and becomes a secret due to the confidentiality clause. With the deal established, Theo is ready to go back to the academy with the items he have purchased. He decides to take all of the items into his backpack and reviews Canis' proposal for a horse carriage. As the sun sets over the mountain ranges, Jason, a guard at the academy's main gate, is ready to end his shift. He's bored due to the lack of people around during the winter vacation. His boredom is briefly interrupted by the arrival of Theo, who has been running to make it back before curfew. Theo has just returned from a successful negotiation with a black market trader. He has a backpack full of items to appraise, which he hopes will increase his magic power. After crossing the academy threshold, Theo heads straight to his dorm room, skipping dinner. In his room, Theo empties his backpack, revealing various items of different sizes and shapes. Despite their worn-out appearance, these artifacts contain magic power. He's content with his haul and looks forward to increasing his magic power. He decides to feed one of the artifacts, a necklace, to Gluttony. As Gluttony consumes the necklace, Theo feels a slight increase in his magic power and proficiency. Unlike consuming magic books, which felt like magic was being burned into his body, consuming artifacts feels like being taught how to handle the magic. Encouraged by this difference, Theo feeds Gluttony more artifacts in quick succession. As each artifact is consumed, Theo's magic power increases slightly and his proficiency with various spells improves. Despite consuming 14 items in a row, Gluttony shows no signs of slowing down. Theo discovers that the digestion time for artifacts is cumulative, leading to a longer wait time. Despite this, he decides to wait for Gluttony to finish digesting the artifacts. As the artifacts are consumed, Theo feels his magic power increase significantly, causing his 2 existing magic circles to strain. In response, Theo focuses his mind and begins to form a third magic circle. His concentration, honed by his low sensitivity, allows him to shape the third circle. However, he falls short of completing it due to a lack of magic power. Despite this setback, Theo is optimistic about reaching the third circle of magic power before the end of winter vacation. He no longer worries about meeting the Academy's requirements and starts to wonder about his future potential. As winter vacation draws to a close, the Academy starts to buzz with activity again. Amidst this, Theo is seen running laps around the campus grounds, pushing his physical limits. He recalls Alfred's advice about the importance of physical strength for a magician and is motivated to train his body. Theo's training regimen includes running and strength exercises. Despite the physical strain, he perseveres, fueling his body with increased food intake. His efforts are rewarded with noticeable changes in his physique and an increase in his magic power. After a strenuous workout, Theo uses a simple spell, Clean, to cleanse himself. He notices that the spell seems more effective than before, hinting at his progression to the third circle of magic power. This realization brings him a sense of accomplishment and motivates him to continue his training. Theo's advancement to the third circle of magic power has significantly improved his magical abilities. He can now use more magic power to enhance the efficiency of his spells, making him a more formidable magician. As he warms his hands inside the Academy building, Theo hears footsteps approaching. Using his heightened sensory perception, a skill he acquired from Alfred's memories, he identifies 3 students approaching. These students, with their disregard for school rules evident in their attire, attempt to intimidate Theo with their loud remarks. However, Theo remains unfazed. Having endured far worse harassment in the past, mere words do not bother him. He continues on his way, undeterred by their presence. Sensing a first circle spell being cast, he counters with his own spell. Unaware of the spell, the students fall over as Theo calmly steps over the affected area. Theo doesn't look back at the fallen students, instead focusing on the upcoming semester. He's determined to put an end to the scorn and taunts he's endured over the past 3 years. With newfound confidence and power, he looks forward to starting his final year in the 3rd grade. Theodore Miller's reputation as the Academy's loser is well known among both existing students and incoming freshmen. Not a single person at the Academy believes Theo will graduate. This sentiment is shared by Professor, who teaches the 3rd grade's alchemy classes. Theo was in a tense relationship with his professor. Initially, Professor respected Theo's noble background despite his family's decline. However, an incident in an alchemy class 2 years ago changed everything. Theo had pointed out that she had quoted from a paper that had been withdrawn by the Magic Society. This criticism, coming from a baron and a student who had repeated a year, was too much for the proud her to bear. From that day on, she was constantly irritated by Theo and sought ways to expel him from the Academy. But Theo's conduct was flawless, and he lacked only practical results. So she decided to challenge him in class. In the current lesson, she taught the class about full moon bead, a complex formula that could turn into poison if not handled correctly. She then asked Theo to explain why it was difficult to combine. Despite the taunts from his classmates, Theo calmly explained that the full moon bead was challenging to make due to the high magic power of its ingredients, which required precise control. She then challenged Theo to combine a full moon bead, a complex formula that even a second circle magician would struggle with. She was certain that Theo would fail, thus providing a reason to expel him for wasting valuable ingredients. However, Theo, confident and unflustered, accepted the challenge and walked to the front of the class. To everyone's astonishment, he successfully combined the full moon bead. Professor was left speechless at the sight of the perfect full moon bead, something she himself couldn't create. Adding insult to injury, Theo pointed out an improvement to her formula, citing a paper published by the Magic Society the previous year. This left the professor in utter disbelief. The next day, news of Theo's achievement spread throughout the Academy. Skeptical professors tested Theo, and he continued to impress them with his newfound abilities. Theo's talent had grown exponentially over the winter break, and he was now able to cast most of the spells he had only studied before. His magic power had reached the middle of the 3rd circle, and he was on track to reach the 4th circle before the end of the 1st semester. Witnesses to Theo's transformation fell into 3 groups. The first group questioned why such a talented magician had ever been labeled a dunce. The second group accepted Theo's achievements as the result of his 5 years of study. They praised his excellence, and even approached him during breaks to ask questions. The third group, however, remained convinced that Theo was still a failure. They viewed his success with hostility, and plotted to bring him down during the upcoming battle magic class, where students would spar to assess their proficiency. These students saw this as an opportunity to challenge Theo, and restore what they believed was the natural order. They were confident in their abilities to defeat Theo, but only time would tell if their confidence was justified. Battle magic, a subject highly valued at the Academy, was taught by Vince, a distinguished war magician. He explained to the students that magicians were efficient killers and had a long history with warfare. This revelation shocked some students, while others were excited by the prospect of becoming war magicians. Vince explained that the Academy was originally a facility to train magicians for the battlefield. While graduates were no longer required to serve in the army, the combat magic course would give them a sense of real warfare. The first class involved a one-on-one spar to assess each student's proficiency. Vince outlined the rules of the spar, warning students against committing fouls and threatening expulsion for any malicious behavior. With the rules established, Vince selects the first participant to be Carter Garcia, and as for the second opponent, he chooses Theo. Vince tosses a coin to decide who attack first. Garcia won the coin toss and launched a lightning bolt at Theo. The outcome of this unexpected matchup was eagerly anticipated by all. Theo deflected Garcia's lightning bolt with a magic shield, then retaliated with a fire bolt. He had modified the spell to focus all the fire arrows on one point, causing Garcia's shield to crack. In response, Garcia prepared a powerful fireball spell. Theo, realizing a shield wouldn't be enough to block the attack, began to construct a more efficient and optimized defense. Theo's pyramidal shield perfectly deflected Garcia's fireball, leaving only minor scorch marks. Theo then launched his own fireball, which was smaller but equally powerful due to his improvements to the formula. Garcia, in his confusion, attempted to block it with a shield, but the fireball shattered it and sent him flying back. The students were stunned as they witnessed the so-called dunce defeating a member of the prestigious Carter family. Theo's victory was a testament to the power of technique over raw power. The students were in disbelief as they watched Theo defeat Garcia, one of the top students in their year. Even Professor Vince was taken aback by Theo's advanced techniques, which were on par with an active war magician. However, Garcia refused to admit defeat. Driven by fear of his family's reaction to his loss, he challenged Theo to withstand one final spell. Despite the dangerous situation, Theo remained calm and observant, much like a seasoned war magician on the battlefield. Garcia began to recite a chant to amplify his spell, a technique that could drastically increase the power of high-level magic and potentially change the course of a battle. The final confrontation between the two students was about to reach its climax. Garcia, using a family artifact, managed to amplify his magic power to cast a fourth circle spell, Blaze Shell. Despite the imminent threat, Theo remained calm and prepared a defensive spell, Earth Dome, to counter Garcia's attack. As Garcia launched his Blaze Shell, confident of his victory, Theo calmly urged him to shoot. The classroom held its breath as the powerful Blaze Shell accelerated towards Theo. Theo's Earth Dome successfully withstood Garcia's Blaze Shell, leaving the students in awe. Garcia, unable to accept his defeat, was left in shock. Theo, on the other hand, casually cleaned his clothes and commented on the situation. Professor Vince, amused by the outcome, declared the spar over and quickly restored the training field to its original state. However, he called Garcia forward and punched him for using an artifact, which was a serious violation of school rules. Garcia now faced potential punishment, including repeating a year or even expulsion.